Welcome to Real Talk with Pam, the show where authenticity meets conversation and where we turn women's lived experiences into shared ones. Today, we're discussing a very crucial topic, healing from sexual abuse. My guest today is Omolayo Oyawoye, a survivor who has turned her pain into purpose, a passionate educator, counselor, and advocate for women and children's emotional stability. Omolayo has dedicated her life to empowering individuals and communities through trauma-informed care, education, and mental health advocacy. She has written 5 impactful books. She inspires countless lives, proving that healing and growth and transformation are possible. Let's get started. Omolayo, thank you so much for being on Real Talk with Pam.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mel.
So, today is a topic, healing from sexual abuse. It's a very emotive topic.
Absolutely.
It's one that I find that a lot of people don't want to talk about because it's either they feel like people won't believe them, or there's a lot of shame and sometimes blame that goes on with talking about sexual abuse. So I'm really, really grateful that you have come to talk about it and share your experience with us.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I wanted to ask you, first of all, to talk a little bit about your experience, about the first time you encountered abuse in your life, and how old were you, and did you even know it was abuse?
Okay, to answer the last question, I didn't know it was abuse. I was 7, and there were a lot of people in our house at that time growing up. I mean, I grew up in a relatively loving atmosphere. My parents were and are still really loving, awesome parents. I mean, I'll choose them over and over again. But we had a lot of people in the house, and this particular person would invite me into his room, right? And it's called, I mean, now as a therapist, I know now it's called a digital rape, insert his fingers. And he did that for many years, right? It came with a lot of pain and discomfort. I didn't like it. But, in our days, you could never ask why. You could never say no to an adult. We felt like adults were always right. Adults knew what they were doing. So I didn't have the boldness or the courage to ask what he was doing or to tell anybody about it. But I noticed that suddenly he left the house. I didn't know why, although I got to know later it was my parents that asked him to leave because they found out what he was doing. Yes. Right. But afterwards, when he left, I mean, I was happy, like, oh, finally this was going to stop, but it didn't stop. Right. It continued again. I think at about 10, 11, he was a neighbor. And I mean, this happened like 4 times before I was 20.
Wow.
At different stages with different people. Yeah. And it was the same thing, right? It was also digital rape with every other person.
Right.
And right now, because of my training, I know how that when sexual abuse has gone on without it being reported, it's likely it repeats itself. It's likely it goes on because you begin to live in your survival brain, and most times you are not able to read safety cues.
Right.
So you're in harm's way almost all of the time. So it feels like the cycle repeats itself, right? So yeah, it went on for that long before I was 20.
Wow. And like you said, you've just talked a little bit about some of the traumas.
Yeah.
Could you just elaborate on that in terms of how it affected you? What were some of your trauma responses?
Okay.
Or how did it present itself?
Okay, so at that time, I didn't know it was called freeze response, but all of the time that the perpetrators had me with them, I froze.
Right.
I couldn't talk. I couldn't scream for help. I couldn't fight. I couldn't run away. I just froze each time. And I mean, I blamed myself for many years for not saying no, for not doing anything, for just standing there and watch them hurt me. I blamed myself as a teenager, as an adult. And it was later I realized, I mean, with my training, that was a freeze response. And what happens with a freeze response is that your brain goes on a pause There are no signals to your body to do anything. You can't move. You can't do anything. You are stuck in that mode, right? So whatever, I mean, it happens to, I mean, maybe you've heard the story of people wanting to cross the road and about to be hit by a car, but instead of running, they stood still. That's the
Right.
freeze response. You don't know what to do. You're not thinking. You're like blank,
Right.
right? So my first response was the freeze response. And afterwards, I would cry. I mean, I cried a lot as a child. I cried a lot as a teenager, even an older teenager. If I remember a friend of mine calling me at some point and saying, "Why do you cry so much?"
Right.
And I used to ask, "Why do I cry so much?" But now I know that it's part of the response. It's part of my trauma response to just exhale the pain through tears. But because sensitization and awareness wasn't as much as we have it now, nobody knew. Everybody's just, oh, you're just a baby, you know.
Right.
So I cried a lot, and my self-esteem was battered. I mean,
Imagine.
I used the word deliberately. I didn't think there was anything good in me. I didn't think I was beautiful, and I always measured myself lower than every other person.
Right.
My grades dropped. I wasn't doing so well, so I thought I was an average child. I thought I was just, you know, horrible at school and everything. So I mean, there are many signs, and that's why I've taken it upon myself to create that sensitization in schools and religious organizations to talk to parents and adults on how to know when the child is going through, right, an abuse, because many children are going through abuse right now, and we don't know because we don't know the signs, right? I was telling you earlier, according to Warif, there is at least six children in 10 are going through some form of violence.
Wow.
Yeah, and the signs are there. It's everywhere. So if you don't see it at home, at least teachers in school should see it. If they don't see it, you know, the community should see it and say, this girl has suddenly withdrawn. That's one of the signs. I became really withdrawn. I had horrible mood swings. You know, you're happy now, and then the next time you're just in a bad mood. And usually I didn't know why, right? So the signs are always there. And I had my signs. Nobody knew. And so, yes, it went on for a long time before, yes, I began my healing.
Wow. And I guess, like you said, one of the things I think is that, particularly in our environment here in Nigeria, that there's a lot of fear for people who are, you know, sexual abuse victims to come out and say, I'm being abused, or because maybe they blame themselves or they feel they will be judged or stigmatized. That's a real thing.
Yeah, it is.
So did you have that? Did you feel like you were going to be stigmatized or be fearful?
Yes. So remember I said that the first time I realized this was happening, I didn't have the strength to talk to anybody or anything. But when I got to primary 6, I remember I was primary 6. I think we're preparing for a common entrance exam when one of the neighbors, you know, began to touch me in that manner as well. I got the courage one day to speak to a friend of mine. We're together, we're neighbors as well, and we attended the same school. So this day I just got really tired, and I felt that, okay, let me talk to my friend. Maybe there was something we could do. And I did talk to her, and she was furious. Oh, let's go and meet him and, you know, confront him. So yes, we went all the way to his house. He was staying with his sister at the time. It was a sister that owned a shop beside our house. So he came to the shop and then comes to my house. So we went to the house at that time, hoping that we would be able to meet him at home and then, you know, warn him and all that. We got there, he wasn't home. We met his sister. And after explaining everything to her, she blamed me.
Wow.
She said it was my fault. She said I was a bad girl. Meanwhile, at this time, I'm not even sure my breasts were budding yet.
Right.
Because I was a late bloomer. So it wasn't anything about dressing or anything like that. And he broke me the more. And I made up my mind I was never going to talk to anybody about it anymore. And so, of course, it continued. And because of that, I kept it to myself. You know, I endured the pain. I felt, at some point, I began to feel that, oh, this is what I'm made for. You know,
Wow.
because it felt like every guy I met, you know, so the fear is there. The fear is real, right? And like I said, apart from the fact that this person judged me, blamed me for it. I blamed myself because I felt I could have screamed. I felt I could have maybe fought my way around it. And so I blamed myself. I knew that people were going to blame me and stigmatize me and all of that. But the moment I began my healing journey, it didn't matter to me anymore. It didn't matter that people were going to look at me and say, oh, this, it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was how many girls and boys can I protect from experiencing this? Because I tell people the sexual abuse I went through was totally unnecessary.
Right.
Some people's story, some people would share their story and say, oh, he came at me with a weapon. I didn't have a choice. You know, I couldn't run away. I couldn't. None of them came at me with a weapon. None of them. In fact, none of them threatened me to say, if you tell your parents, I would do. None of them threatened me. What predisposed me was lack of education.
Right.
There was no age-appropriate sexuality education. Nothing, nobody told me to say, if anybody tried to get into your pants, that is sexual abuse. This is what to do. This is how to react. Nobody told me. I didn't even know what they were doing. I just knew it was painful. I didn't know it was a criminal offense. All right. And that's why anywhere I go, I want to tell parents, you need to train your children. They need to know this is a real thing. All right. They need to know how to report it. They need to know when people are crossing their boundaries. They need to know their rights. They need to know they could say no. They need to know they could run away. They could defend themselves. All right. Because that was the only thing I didn't have.
Right.
And I mean, you can't blame my parents. They didn't know as well. They didn't know that it was a thing. All right. And I mean, the world has changed.
Yes.
The children we are raising right now, they've got to know their rights, including sexual abuse that can happen over the internet.
Right.
Because the children of these days are more predisposed to that. So you say you want to protect them. You say, oh, they are too young. I don't want any parents to imagine and assume that their children are too young to understand simple sexuality education.
Right. Yeah.
They just need to know what their private parts are. When people are crossing the boundary, they need to know they can trust you as an adult, or you as a teacher in school, or you as a parent. They need to know that. So they need to know that there's somebody they could talk to. So some years back, right, about 2 or 3 years ago, I was on some TV stations sharing my story, and some of my uncles and aunties heard my story and felt really bad that I didn't tell them about it.
Right.
Right. Because, I mean, some of them grew up with me. They loved me. They still love me as an adult. And I realized, so I was asking myself, why didn't I walk up to any of them? It was because nobody talked about it. You know, so if a parent comes home, you typically would ask about your child's assignment. You know, you typically would talk to them about church, about scriptures, about morality, but nobody was talking about sex education.
Sure.
So there was no one I could connect with that. I felt it was a dirty thing. I felt it was embarrassing, right? So it was tough to say, oh, I could walk to this person. And that was how I was able to explain to them. So this stigmatization is real. The children around us today need to know there is somebody they can talk to without being judged.
Yes. That's such an excellent point, Omolayo, because I think that, you know, growing up, sex wasn't something that our parents talked to us about because they felt like we're not old enough to know. That's something you shouldn't be engaging in. But the education is really important because I remember my daughter, I grew up, you know, my daughter was born abroad, but it is a real thing that at 7, I started to say to her, these are your private parts. And your private parts is private.
Yes.
So if anybody touches you there, it's not right. In fact, she was younger than 7. So that was really important for her. And I remember buying a book. I don't really remember the name of the book, but we went through it together, but helping her identify that if somebody touches you in these areas, that's not normal.
Absolutely.
And I think that's such an excellent point that we need to begin to teach our children from a very young age what is appropriate and what is
for
not.
that age, absolutely.
Absolutely. So that is an excellent point. So what I wanted to ask you as well was what has helped, what triggered your healing journey? How did you, because you are completely healed now.
I'm in the process, yes.
In the
Correct,
process,
yes.
but and you are, you go around helping others,
Yes.
going on conferences. You're a speaker on this issue. So, what triggered your healing process?
Thank you so much for that. I mean, I love to talk about this more than the abuse because this is what people need, the healing, right? So my healing began when I met this friend. So one of the ways I was able to navigate my symptoms as a teenager was I poured myself into church. I mean, I was a church girl. I'm still a church girl, right? And I was that typical teenager that you love to see. You see everywhere. I'm the one trying to gather people. Let's do this. Let's do that. So when you look at me, I looked like I was fine. I looked like I was doing well. I was a typical leader. So
Right.
I was found everywhere. And so nobody thought to ask if I was fine, right? Are you okay? Yeah. But this person did. He just came back to church at that time and said, see, I see you everywhere, but there's this thing about you, there's something deeply wrong. Is this something
Right.
you like to talk about? It felt like it was the first time someone saw beyond the facade and wanted to know me deeper. It was tough initially because he's a guy and I had a thing for for guys at that time. Like in fact, at some point I thought I was never going to be married,
Right.
right? Because I felt I had nothing to give. And so he just asked, and I remember crying that day and telling him everything. I told him everything. And for the first time, I felt some love.
Right.
And he told me how I was loved by God regardless of what I've been through. I felt like was the first time I was ever going to hear that. Because yes, it wasn't like I didn't know that God loved me. I knew God loved me, but it felt like that part of my life God wasn't aware.
Right.
It felt like I was completely kept away from God and that God wasn't interested. And he opened me up to the fact that this part of your life, God is interested and he still loves you like that. And I think that I just crumbled on that, the tenderness of the realization that I'm loved beyond it. And that was what opened me up. And so everywhere I go and I have the chance to talk to survivors, the first thing I let them know is you are loved.
Right.
That is the beginning of your healing. You're loved, you're enough, you're accepted, you're valued, you're proved, you're worthy, So that's how my healing began. And the fact that I was able to really talk about it without the fear of being judged or stigmatized, because he just listened. He wasn't trying to cut in. He wasn't blaming me. He wasn't asking, where were you? What did you? All of those really horrible questions people ask survivors. He just listened, and I felt heard. Right. So, feeling heard, feeling loved, feeling listened to and understood, opened me up to a world of healing. And as I became a therapist, that also helped me to now practically put in some techniques on the work that requires for the rewiring of the brain that helps me overcome some of the challenges of low self-esteem, of trying to seek validation and approval from people. Like I said earlier, you live in your survival brain when you've survived abuse, and so anywhere you show up, you feel that you need to show up extra to be accepted.
Right.
You need to, you are living in survival. I need to do something. I need to do something. They need to see me in this manner so that I can be accepted. So, I was trying to do all of that a lot. When I began my healing journey, I realized that I don't need to show up extra to be accepted and loved. I am enough without the extra. I am loved without the extra. So that's how my healing journey began. And being able to talk to people about it, I felt a lot of healing by sharing my story.
Right.
I've shared the story for 20 years now, and every time I shared it, I got even healed more. Now I know it takes courage to be able to share it, and I'm not talking about this loosely, like, oh, what's the big deal, just go out there and share your story. No, that's not what I'm saying. Sometimes at a point when I shared my story, I cried, because it's just when I wrote this book on I Work to Healing, there was a part where, I mean, my story wasn't like elaborately written there because I just want people to focus on the healing. But I wrote a little part about the last one that happened. And I cried. I wrote this book last year. I still cried.
Right.
And I was wondering, like, are you okay? What's wrong with you? You've talked about this over and over. And I realized that this particular part, although unintentionally, I've never really opened it up.
Right.
But when I had to write it, it brought back memories and I cried. And it was okay, right? And so talking about it is tough, is hard sometimes. But in my healing journey, I realized that the more I shared my story, the healed I become. Because there is nothing, there are no memories nagging at me anymore. I'm just, I've let it out there. And so there's nothing that hurts as such anymore. So yes, that opened me up to healing.
Fantastic. We'll take a quick break right now. We'll come back and continue this amazing conversation. Welcome back to Real Talk with Pam. Just before the break, I was having an incredible conversation with Omolayo about her journey to healing from sexual abuse. So, Omolayo, thank you again. It's been very educational thus far. So I wanted to know, for you in your healing journey, I'm sure one of the challenges that you might have had is trusting in relationships. Now, you're married, you have 3 kids, which is incredible. How were you able to make that mind shift to start to trust again and leading to a relationship and then ultimately marriage?
Okay, yes, you're very right. It takes a while to be able to trust again. It takes a while to feel feel like this person actually loves you and to open yourself, because relationships require some form of vulnerability, and it takes a while to become vulnerable to anyone, especially of the opposite sex, the same people that seem to have hurt you. And so yes, it took me a while. So this person came at me as a friend, came to me as a friend, it didn't look like there was anything that was ever going to come up between us, right? Like I told you earlier, one of my coping mechanisms was to pour my energy into church and all of that. So we met in church, and we were just, all out for teenagers, for young people. So we're both just busy doing that. We weren't thinking about relationships. So we became close. And yes, it's the same person I said I spoke to that felt like, I think there's more to you, and that, would you like to talk about it? Yes, that's the same person. So yes, I for some weird reason, found it easy to be vulnerable with him. So when we talked about that, our friendship went, higher. We became really close and all of that. So yes, with time, I became even more vulnerable. But we were friends for about 5 years before he asked me out.
Right.
So I had a long time to process just being his friends, and then we began to have feelings for each other. And typical me, I began to deny that I had a feeling for him, and I wasn't even sure I was in the headspace to get into a relationship. I wasn't even sure of what I felt.
Right.
But the biggest part of it was I wasn't sure he felt the same way. I wasn't sure the feeling was mutual. My husband is handsome, really good looking. And I felt like, no, he wouldn't want me. He would want other girls. I mean, at that time, I was still struggling with low self-esteem. I still felt I wasn't beautiful enough to be desired. And so I felt like, oh, no. This feeling can't be mutual. He would, I mean, there are lots of beautiful girls around him who had everything and all that. So I decided to push that aside. But yeah, he asked me out. It was really weird because I'm like, what, really? And I couldn't give him an answer until about 8 months after.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, I just wanted to be sure because I wasn't ready to gamble with my heart again. I wasn't going to, be in that space where someone was going to hurt me all over again.
Right.
And so it took me a long time. And I mean, he is the perfect gentleman. He wasn't rushing me to do anything. He wasn't pushing me to do anything. He just told me to take my time. And yes, I did take my time. And I'm fortunate to have been married to him now. We're going to be 14 years this year.
Wow.
Yes. So it took a long time. And usually I always tell survivors to take their time before getting into a relationship. You need to be sure you're there. And for me, what helped was I was able to talk to someone who helped me through it. So I wasn't just talking to him. He had time to counsel me,
Okay.
to make me see my worth. And it was funny how that he treated me with love. So my self-esteem began to build up again. I began to, because there were many things he made me see in those 5 years, to say, Sila, you can do this. You are not defined by this. My husband is the real deal, right? Because he put in the work, always trying to encourage me, trying to get me to do things. And so you're not defined by what you've been through. You've got it. Just try this. And with time, my self-esteem had improved. I began to also see myself in a better light. And so I could say that there was a shift from where I was to a good place where I could make a romantic relation decision. Many of us are not there yet. It takes time to be in the place to say that, do I really like this guy? Do I like this guy? Am I liking this guy because I feel that I do not have a choice, and that if I lose this guy, there won't be any other guy? Do I think this guy likes me back? Like, does he like me in that light? Some people can like you and not like you in a marital light, in for the long haul. Do I think this guy is ready? I had 5 years, 8 months to determine that.
Right.
I think that what the error many survivors make is because see, you want to be loved. It's a natural human desire to be loved. So when you find it somewhere, even if it's little, you want to stay there forever. Right? But these people may not have the capacity to love you for that long. Right? Some people may come your way at the time you need them most, and can only love you when you're at your lowest.
Right.
When you've gained some strength, they may not have the capacity to love you being a strong woman.
Right.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but some people cannot handle a strong woman or a strong man. They only have the capacity, to pet you, to be there for you when you are weak and vulnerable. The moment you have some strength, because they've been there to help you.
Right.
Now you're standing on your own. They can't handle it.
Right.
Right.
So the dynamics change.
It has changed.
Right.
They don't have anything to offer you at that time. They can only offer help when you're low. Now that you're on the high, there's nothing to give. And so you need to find out if these people are able to handle a new you, a changed you, a evolving, healed you. So, and you need time to test these things. You do need time to test. And that's why I always encourage friendships. Just be friends with these people and take your time to determine if you are in the headspace, if you think you have healed enough. I tell people that when you haven't healed from your trauma, you bleed on the people that love you.
Right.
It's like a physical pain that is untreated. Everywhere you go, you have drops of blood, right? And so you don't even want to get into a relationship when you're still bleeding. You will bleed on. You will hurt the people who are trying to help you. And many times is beyond your control, because you are under a psychological pain that you yourself can handle. And so typically a sexual abuse survivor would have to seek therapy.
Right.
You have to seek help to rewire your brain, to help you manage your symptoms, so that you don't lash out on people who are trying to help you, who are trying to show you love. And like I said, it takes time. So take your time, and then you would find that, okay, I'm in the right place or I'm not.
Right.
Someone that loves you and wants to be there the long haul, it's not going to pressure you into anything.
Right.
They won't feel like, oh, I'm old enough, I think I'm ready to be married. So if you are not ready, you're not ready. And you don't want to parent a child with a bleeding heart. It's not a good place to be. So I have all 3 girls, and I thought, and that's why I said I'm in the healing process. I began my healing journey about 20 years ago. It marks 20 years this year. I've done so well. God's been good to me, right? But there are some triggers that still show up along the way, like having children, like having a teenager.
Right, and being afraid.
And being afraid that the same thing can happen to them.
Right.
And they are all girls. So I was a paranoid parent. I had to, it took a lot of work to look at my children and say, they are not me. They don't have to run my race. Right? They are not me, and I should let them live their lives. I used to be so paranoid. I'd ask my 5-year-old daughter at that time to come after school to show me a pond.
Wow.
I want to see. I hope nobody touched you. It's a question we ask every day. I hope nobody touched you today. I hope nobody. And I guess at some point she got really tired of it, but she couldn't tell me. Thank God I found out that I think I'm traumatizing this girl. Like
Right.
every day, pull up your pants. I hope that it was messy. So you don't want to get into marriage, give birth to children in that mess. You need to find help. You need to get help so that you would raise a new generation of children who didn't even know that you had symptoms of trauma, because
Right.
you have healed to a point where you allow them grow, you allow them be children.
Sure. Allow them with children, but educate them in a
Yes,
healthy way.
yes, absolutely.
That's great. That's great. So that leads me to my next question in terms of, with people who are still in that situation where they are being abused, men or women, because men get abused
Yes,
as well.
absolutely.
What would you say to them who are afraid to speak up? And do you think that there is enough support in Nigeria at the moment for victims of sexual abuse?
Thank you. I'm going to start from the last one. The support in Nigeria could be better. I think I'm going to say it that way. It could be better. I know Lagos State is doing a fantastic job protecting children from violence and especially from sexual abuse. I know that there are lots of NGOs in Lagos especially who are poised to, adopt children who have been abused, counsel, treat, and do all of that. But I think that there has to be more work on the legislation, and we have to have laws that protect survivors of sexual abuse more than what we have right now. And we need to raise the awareness a little higher. We don't have enough awareness. But what we have less of is enough education. We do not have enough age-appropriate education. We're not talking about it in school. We're not talking about it in religious organizations. We're not talking about it in our communities. Children do not know what to do when they are faced with pedophiles.
Right.
And we need to talk more about it. We need to let children know what sexual abuse looks like. We need to let them know what pedophiles look like. Pedophiles will be out there grooming children. They'll be out there making children feel loved, feel okay. And when it is time they strike, by the time they strike, a child who can't even say no won't be able to say no because they get all the love from this person. Why? Because an adult hasn't told this child to watch out. So we can't be quiet. We can't leave the job to parents alone. Because I know people would say, oh, sex education is a family conversation. I agree. But some families are not talking about it. And so if families are not talking about it, how do we protect children? So what we do need is that everybody is talking about it. So if the child does not get education at home, he's getting in school. If the child is not getting in school, he's getting in church or in the mosque or in the community. And that's why I want to, sensitize every adult. Because see, if you're an adult, every child around you is your responsibility.
Absolutely.
You have the responsibility to protect children around you. We're talking about posterity. You want to be that adult that saved this child from sexual abuse, that the child will grow up and become an adult and say, thank God for this auntie who was my neighbor, who saw this guy doing this to me and protected me. You want to be that person. So we need to create the awareness on how children can protect themselves. So what we are saying is, the education is to arm the children with the weapon they need to protect themselves if there is no adult around.
Right.
Something that says that, okay, this is about to happen, what can I do? There's nobody in the heck that can help me. I can help myself. I can run away. I can say no. I can say, don't touch me there. I can report it. Right? So we need to create awareness. We need to teach age-appropriate education, especially even sexual abuse that can come from the internet, from strangers. I hear people teach good touch and bad touch, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I say that we need to teach that bad touch sometimes can feel good.
Right.
All right.
Excellent.
So I wouldn't teach good touch and bad touch, because bad touch can feel good. So if
teach no touch.
No, exactly. We just need to let them know that your private part belongs to you. It's private. Nobody should touch it, even if it feels good.
Absolutely.
Right, because
excellent.
when children are going through adolescence, the hormones are everywhere. They want to be touched. That's the truth. All right. But you let them know, and see, because we have not taught sexuality education, we are very shy. We feel that it's exposing the children to too much. We feel that, oh, that's messing up with their innocence. And I'm saying, see, what you don't want to teach, the children are learning. They are learning on the internet.
Absolutely.
They are learning on the playground. They are learning in the school bus. You don't want to teach it, but your neighbor's child, your neighbor's niece that stays in their house watches porn where your daughter is. So your daughter learns it without you teaching her.
That's
all right?
Right. That's
So
right.
when this child is in the same school bus with your own daughter, they talk about it. She tells you, oh, I saw this on my auntie's phone yesterday. And so your daughter is learning without you teaching them.
That's
so I
right.
say that this important information, you want to be the person to teach your child first.
Absolutely. And I also, to add on to that, I also think that it's in this day and age where, like you said, our kids can learn anything of the internet.
yes.
I mean, forget trying to hide anything from them. It's also important as a parent to create a safe space for your children to be able to talk about anything. You might be dying on the inside and saying, oh my goodness, but not to show it, but to create that space that whatever happens, you can come to me.
Yeah.
Because if you are that parent who is saying, don't you dare do this, don't you dare do that, they're not going to come to you.
They won't talk to you.
So
They'll be
that
too
is
afraid
really,
to open
really
up.
important.
Yes, you have to create a safe space. And see, creating a safe space is not just saying, see, I'm your friend, you can talk to me about anything. No, you have to talk about it. They need to see, when they have a maths assignment, they can come to you because you've talked about maths. So when they think maths problem, they think mommy, because mommy has talked about maths. But when they have sexual problems, they don't know who to think about because nobody's talking about it except Google.
That's right.
Right? And Google is not going to ask your child, how old are you? So I can give age appropriate response. Google will just give all the answers. You type in, what is sex? Google will give you videos, will give you everything you need to know about sex. But you as a mother or a father, because fathers need to get involved in this conversation.
That's right.
Right? Knows that my daughter is 10, my son is 10. I need to start talking about wet dreams. I need to start talking about menstruation. I need to start talking about facial hair and all of those things. So when they have struggles with their emotional development, physical development, they think, oh, daddy mentioned something like this. I think I can talk to daddy. So it's not just saying, oh, I'm your friend, you can talk to me. Talk about sex.
Absolutely.
Talk about the growth. That way, when they encounter, in fact, when they have conversations with their friends in school, they're coming back home to say, daddy, my friend said this, what did you think about it? And then you can, and I always encourage families to have a family values on sexuality. What do we do in this house? In my house, because we're all girls, my husband is the only male, we don't walk about half naked.
Right.
That's our own values. I'm not saying that should be yours. I'm saying that's so everybody knows. All right. So in this house, we don't kiss on the lips. We give each other a peck. That's our family values. What is your family values on sexuality education that your child is aware of? In this house, we don't have sex before marriage. What is yours? So they are not confused. When they go out there and people are saying all sorts of things, they are not confused. They know what is right. All right. And so we must create a safe space in our families. So I wanted to talk to survivors who are still in the, you're enduring abuse and all of that. I'd say that you are not alone. You are not alone. You are in good company. I've been there. I know how it feels. And I want to say, please do not keep quiet about it. Let us talk about it. That's your first step to healing. And the second thing I need you to know is that you are not defined by how you've been treated. You are not defined by that rape, by that sexual abuse. I need you to know that this does not need to define your future. It doesn't have to be your story in the future. It's just a part of your story. It's not the entirety of your story. I mean, I tell people that if I don't share this part of my story, you never guess.
Right.
You never guess. And so I know it's tough right now. It's difficult. But this does not have to be you forever. You can be healed. You can be restored. God loves you. Absolutely. God does not judge you. He's not blaming you. And he's not stigmatizing you. You can find healing. You can be fine. And you can move on with your life.
Amazing, amazing. So just finally, I know you wrote a book. You've written
Yes.
5 books,
Yes, I
which is
have.
amazing, all
Thank you.
around sexual education.
Yes, and healing.
But the one that I have is called A Walk to Healing. So we will drop it on the platform for anyone who wants to get it. It's great for you to learn, to identify for your own children, and also to give as a gift to people, just so that they are educated about it. And it talks about her own personal healing to personal journey to healing. So thank you for that.
Thank you, ma'am.
So finally, I just want you to take a look at the camera again and just speak from your heart what you want parents to know, maybe some of the signs they can start looking, and a conversation starter for them to make sure that they are not, that their children are not going through something that they don't know about.
Okay, so conversation starters are, you can start by talking about your story. You can share how you navigated puberty. All right, just share. I mean, all of us have been through puberty. We know how it feels like, right? To see the changes in your body, in your feelings, in your emotions. So you can start conversations around sex education by talking about how your growth was. When you begin that, they ask questions about how it was, and that way they can talk about how they feel. All right, and for parents who already have teenagers, young adults, you can start talking to them by asking them questions. How does it feel to start your menstruation? How does it feel to experience wet dreams? You know, those would help you get into, yeah, I agree that it could be awkward. Yes, it could be awkward. And honestly, you might get questions that you didn't see coming. It's okay. When you have questions that you can't answer, tell them, I'm sorry, can I answer this the next time? Can you give me time to process this? That way you're not under pressure to oversay or undersay, right? I need you to know that parents, you've got this. I know nobody taught you, but you can teach your own children. We learn on the job. We learn as we grow and as they grow. But the error we shouldn't make is to be quiet about it. What you don't teach your children, they will learn on the street, and honestly, you won't like what they learn. All right, and when if your child is going through abuse, there are signs that you could pick that lets you know that something is going wrong. One is that they may begin to withdraw. You know, you have a child who's vivacious, who's out there playing, and then suddenly they are withdrawing. They don't want to go to some places. They are crying when they go to some places. That could be your sign. Their grades may begin to drop. They may begin to cry a lot. They may begin to sleep a lot. Then you may begin to find lacerations on their skin, because some of them, to cope with the emotional pain, they may begin to self-harm. All right, so you may begin to see lacerations on their skin or in their genitals. All right, they may become now this may not be all the time, but sexual abuse is also responsible for some early bloomers.
Right.
Right, when a girl is being sexually abused, she blooms faster.
Right.
So you may want to, it may not be the case all the time, but that could be a sign. Okay, another sign to look out for is, yes, when they now start having discharges and bleeding off cycle. It's not like it's time for menstruation or anything like that. So if you see these signs, you may want to ask a few questions, and I would beg that you see a professional. Both of you, parents will need a professional to speak to. The child would also need a professional to speak to. I hope that this has been helpful. I know you've got this, and I'm rooting for you.
Amazing, amazing. Just finally, I forgot to ask this, but could you just also mention a couple of organizations that people can go to that are supporting? Supportive.
So I'm very sure Chicheriara has an amazing structure that protects young people, children who's been through sexual abuse. You can reach out to them on a toll-free line. I'm going to get and maybe send to you so that we can put on the platform. I know that there is also a toll-free line from the Lagos State Police, I think, that you can also reach out to them when an abuse is going on. And it doesn't have to sexual abuse alone, any form of abuse, domestic violence, and all of those things that you can call. Warif is also there. You can speak to them. These people would listen to you. They have a structure that helps protect you, counseling, treatment, and everything when a child especially is going through sexual abuse.
Great, great. Omolayo, thank you so much for being on Real Talk with Pam. It's been
Pleasure.
amazing. Thank you so much for this educative session.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Omolayo for sharing her expertise and passion with us today. Her dedication to supporting survivors of sexual abuse is truly inspiring. Remember, healing is possible and there is support available. Till next time, keep being authentic and let's continue the conversation. Bye for now.